Friday night. It's the most social night of the week. I mean, a couple of lookers like us should be out there enjoying a nightlife.
Everybody's working for the weekend.
Thank God it's Friday!
You wanna be in the show? Come on, let's go.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHEL.
Well, good morning. Happy Friday. I'm Ross. We made it. It's Friday. Oh, my gosh.
Hey, Ross,
Actually, yeah?
did you want a little something from our 8 o'clock guest?
Ooh, do we have a special guest at 8 o'clock, DJ Shannon?
I can feel no sense of measure, no illusions.
Oh, my gosh. I could sit here and listen to music all morning. You can keep playing it.
Breaking down the dreams.
Oh, my gosh. I am so excited for this 8 o'clock guest. I love the bass there in that voice. John Anderson, the lead singer of Yes, one of my favorite bands of all time, is going to join us in the 8 o'clock hour. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I know I just sound like a complete little fanboy, but man, Yes has been one of my favorite bands since I first started listening to music. And now we got the lead singer of Yes on the show. If any of you is a huge Yes fan and you have a question you would like me to ask John Anderson 2 hours from now, you can email it to me at ross@khow.com, or you can text it to me at 57739. Actually, hold on, I gotta plug this thing in. I do this every day. I unplug this thing at night, and then I gotta plug it in the morning so that when I play audio, it goes to the radio station instead of just playing on my speakers here at the house. As long as we're playing a little John Anderson music and trying to maybe even tie it into the show a little bit. So one of my favorite albums of all time is by John and Vangelis. So John Anderson of Yes and Vangelis, they did, I want to say they did 4 albums together, 3 in the early 80s and then one about 10 years later. But one of my favorite albums of all time is called The Friends of Mr. Cairo. That particular song itself, the first song on the album, is one of my favorite rock songs of all time. But there's a lot of great songs on the album, and one of them is called Back to School.
I wanna go back. I wanna go back to school. I wanna go back to school. You might think I'm a crazy fool. I wanna go back to school.
Anyway, you get the idea there, but I thought that would be a fun little lead-in to some comments made by Governor Polis yesterday. He said it is, and I quote, reasonably safe to open our schools back up as the school year is supposed to start a few years from now. It seems like school districts, even districts that are very near each other, districts that are touching each other, are making some fairly different decisions. Jefferson County, for example, seems like it's planning on doing a little less and doing it a little later than Littleton schools, just as an example. And then Denver schools has already said they're not going to do in-person learning until October, although they are going to apparently be opening the schools for like babysitting or daycare locations before October, and the teachers will be allowed to go into the schools before October. All of it seems very confused, and much of it seems to be pushed by teachers' unions, which is quite a drag. Teachers' unions demonstrating once again that they are a force for, well, evil might be a little strong, but they are a force for harm in the United States of America. Not the individual teacher members, okay? I'm talking about teacher union leadership. Different in different places. The biggest unions are the worst. You know, you've got the teachers union in Los Angeles, for example, saying that they don't want to go back to work unless the government does all kinds of crazy social justice things that have nothing to do with education. You know, handing out millions of dollars and doing things for illegal aliens and all kinds of stuff. Denver's not quite that bad. Colorado's not quite that bad, but still. On the other hand, I've said this once before. I'm going to say it one more time here. We, including I, those of us who are not teachers, spend a lot of time, and especially those of us who are parents, spend a lot of time thinking about the question of reopening schools from the perspective of students and parents. And from the perspective of students and parents, at least from a lot of us, kids need to be back in school, and I want schools open for in-person learning on time with things in place, with plans, with procedures, with protocols in place to help minimize the risk of the spread of the virus, whether it's between students, which doesn't seem like the most likely thing based on what we've seen, or from teacher to student or student to teacher or any of that, or teacher to teacher or staff to, you know, whatever, right? So I get from the perspective of some teachers, they might be kind of worried about going back to school. And we do need to take that very seriously. I value our teachers. I like and respect most teachers. They're crappy teachers just like they're crappy members of any other profession, right? There are great teachers and crappy teachers, great cops and crappy cops, great radio hosts and crappy radio hosts, and on and on and on and on. But mostly we love our teachers. And I don't want people to forget what's important to the teachers and the risks that they might feel like they're taking. And that's why it's actually, I think, quite important that Polis said what he said. And I quote a little more. Unlike parts of Texas and much of Florida, it's reasonably safe to open schools. By the way, I think that's a good, plain English, reasonably accurate description, right? It's not really putting a number on it. It's more of a qualitative description than a quantitative one, but it's one that sort of captures the gestalt of it all. Just as it's reasonably safe to go to the grocery store, just as it's reasonably safe to go to work. He added that reflects a lot of sacrifices that Coloradans have made to make schools a safe place to be. I know many kids are going to be going back in coming weeks, including my own. So, you know, we'll see how this plays out. I think that Polis recognizes, and surely you and I recognize, and teachers' unions either don't recognize or don't care, that having kids at home during the school year is a terrible thing for the kids and for the parents. Very few kids will learn effectively on a screen. Very few. So now they're really not getting the reading, writing, arithmetic, the social studies, the art, the music, everything. They're not learning. Think about this. If a kid goes to school K through 12, that's 13 years of schooling. So each year of schooling is a little under, let's say a little under 8% of your pre-college schooling. Every month that goes by, you know, you're really talking about kids losing, you know, let's say 1% of their education or maybe a little more for every month. And we've already had, 2-3 months of this. And now they're talking about more, especially in Denver. This is really bad. And then what about parents who need to work? Need to work to put food on the table and for all the other reasons that people need to work, right? And let's say they're parents who, middle income, lower middle income, lower income. I don't need to tell you how expensive childcare is. Sometimes we get to a point, and you know what? It's not hard to get to, where the cost of childcare is so high that in a two-parent household where both parents work, the cost of childcare is so high so often that it makes sense financially for one of the parents to stop working if the kid has to be at home. Now, again, that's bad for everybody. The kid's not learning. The parent's not working. The government isn't collecting income tax. The family is earning less money, so they're spending less money, so the government is also collecting less sales tax. And then, again, I'm not a champion for, big government or government doing more things, but at some point then the government, it closes a rec center, it closes a library, or it says we need to raise taxes because we're not collecting enough money because people aren't working. But people aren't working because the kids aren't in school. The kids aren't in school because the teachers' unions are saying they want this, that, and the other thing that really many of them don't have anything to do with safety. And I feel like I'm on a lifelong quest to try to help suburbanites in particular, but liberals everywhere, understand that teachers' unions are not our friends. I mean, most unions aren't, right? I mean, unions have a function for the union members, but I actually think teachers' unions, more than most unions, don't even act particularly in the interest of their own members as much as just in the interest of the union leadership. I'm sure there are plenty of teachers who are union members who would like to go back to school and either aren't that worried about the virus or, based on specific information about their school district and their school, believe that enough is being done to protect them and they're comfortable with it. Anyway, Jared says it's reasonably safe. I think that's about right. Can't put a number on it. It's reasonably safe. And for me, reasonably safe, especially when you're talking about kids who seem to have so little impact from the virus, reasonably safe to me is more than safe enough for schools to be open, because the harm to kids and parents from kids not being in school is so great. Let's just make sure we take care of the teachers. It should not be very difficult to set up procedures and protocols where teachers don't need to get particularly close to the kids or to other teachers or to anybody else. There's no reason that a teacher has to go get within a foot of a kid, right? I guess the only reason one could think of, if you're dealing with very little kids and maybe you've got some kind of, discipline issue with 2 6-year-olds that are not behaving or something. Got to work that out. On the other hand, the littlest kids are the ones who seem not only least likely to get the virus or suffer any effects from the virus, but also least likely to spread it. So that's somewhat of a self-solving problem. All right, one other thing I want to just do right now. I talked yesterday, very late in the show, in the 9 o'clock hour, about a tweet that President Trump sent yesterday morning. It happened to be during the show, where he, I don't know whether you want to call it suggested, but raised the idea of delaying the election. And what I said yesterday, and actually what I had said in previous days in a Ross Report when a listener brought up this question, was it's theoretically possible in the sense that Congress has the power to change election day, although they do not have the power to change inauguration day for a president, but Congress has the power to change election day. So that's the theoretical answer. But the actual answer right now is that it's completely impossible that the election day would change, because it would require an act of Congress, which is impossible. No Democrats would go for it. and almost no Republicans would go for it. And it was a really dumb tweet by President Trump, not just because he was suggesting something impossible, because that's not always dumb in and of itself. It was a bad idea because it was always going to put Republicans, senior Republicans, Republicans who are up for re-election, in a position of having to disagree with the president. And some might say, oh, that's actually genius of Trump. He's giving vulnerable Republicans the opportunity to separate themselves from him. No. So Mitch McConnell and a bunch of other Republicans came out yesterday and said, under no circumstance is the election going to be moved. Kevin McCarthy, not really a vulnerable member of Congress, said, never in the history of federal elections have we ever not held an election, and we should go forward with our election. We didn't delay the election for the more serious pandemic, 1917. We didn't delay the election for the Civil War or World War II, and on and on and on. So President Trump actually did back off a little bit. And he was asked about this, and he said, do I want to see a date change? No, but I don't want to see a crooked election. He's made this point, and I get the point that he's trying to make. But now people are talking about it as if what Trump is really trying to do is to cast doubt on whatever the election result will be, so that if he loses, he can come back and say it wasn't fair. And if he loses, I sure hope he doesn't do that, because there's nothing in that for anybody. That can only do tremendous harm to this country. Wouldn't even help Donald Trump, which is really what Donald Trump cares about, but it really wouldn't help anybody. So I hope he doesn't do that. Anyway, the other thing is, one other reason that I thought that tweet was such a mistake is that there's so little time until the election, right? What are we, 96 days or something until the election? And he blew up one of them, getting people to talk about things they didn't need to be talking about. Anyway,
this is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Michael Brown at 2, 630 KHOW, Denver. Now, Impact Traffic.
This report is